They fell in love on a boat, somewhere on the narrow sea, between Dragonstone and White Harbor, while the world outside was preparing for the longest night in living memory. Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen found each other. It felt like destiny. It was, in a way, nobody on that boat understood yet, also a catastrophe. Because the woman Jon Snow was falling in love with was not a foreign queen with silver hair and 3 dragons. She was his father's sister, his aunt, by blood, by the ancient laws of both their families, and neither of them knew it. That is the specific horror at the center of their story. Not that they fell in love despite being related, but that they fell in love without knowing it. Genuinely, completely, without any of the darkness that knowledge would have brought. Their love was real. It was clean. It was the most honest thing either of them had felt in years. And it was built on a foundation that, the moment it was revealed, would crack everything standing on top of it. If you're new here, this is Mereth Tales. Subscribe and hit the bell. This one is the story nobody tells cleanly. To understand what made this relationship so devastating, you have to understand who each of them was before they met. Jon Snow had spent his entire life defined by what he didn't know about himself. He was a bastard, or so he believed. Ned Stark's son by an unnamed woman, never acknowledged, never explained, carrying the weight of that mystery like a stone in his chest. He had no claim, no birthright, no story that connected him to anything larger than the wall he guarded. He was, by his own understanding, nobody. And then he met a woman who was the opposite of nobody. Daenerys Targaryen had spent her entire life defined by everything she had been told she was. The last dragon, the rightful queen, the blood of old Valyria, heir to a dynasty that had ruled for 300 years before her father burned it to the ground in a single night of madness. She was, by her own understanding, the most important person alive. 2 people, one who believed he was nothing, one who believed she was everything, finding each other at the exact moment the world needed both of them. Of course they fell in love. Of course it felt like destiny. But here is what destiny was actually doing. 300 years of Targaryen history had built toward a single prophecy, the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai reborn, a figure who would stand against the darkness when it came. The Targaryens had kept this prophecy alive through their bloodline, through their marriages, through the obsessive belief that the right combination of their blood would eventually produce the hero the world needed. Rhaegar Targaryen believed the prophecy was about his children. He left his wife, Elia Martell, and took Lyanna Stark, not entirely by force, as the world believed, but in a secret marriage performed in a tower in Dorne. He believed their child would be the promised prince. He believed he was fulfilling destiny. What he actually did was create Jon Snow. And Jon Snow, raised as a bastard in the north, trained as a ranger on the wall, elected Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and resurrected from death itself, grew up to be exactly the kind of person the prophecy described. So did Daenerys. 2 people, from the same bloodline, shaped by completely different lives, arriving at the same moment in history to face the same enemy, and falling in love along the way without knowing they were family. The prophecy, if it meant anything at all, may have required both of them, and their relationship, forbidden as it was, may have been exactly what it was supposed to be. That is the maddening thing about their story. It was wrong by every human law, and right by every cosmic one. Now let's talk about the blood. The Targaryens had married within the family for 300 years. Brother to sister, uncle to niece, cousin to cousin. It was not considered forbidden within their culture. It was considered sacred. a way of keeping the dragon blood pure, of ensuring that the next generation could bond with dragons, of fulfilling the prophecies that ran through their family like a river through stone. By Targaryen standards, Jon and Daenerys were not doing anything their ancestors hadn't done a dozen times before. By the standards of the world around them, the North, the Seven Kingdoms, the people who had bent the knee to Daenerys or followed Jon Snow, it was an abomination. And here is where the politics of their relationship become inseparable from the personal. Jon's identity, when it was revealed, did not just change how he saw himself, it changed how everyone around him saw Daenerys. Because Jon was not just her nephew. He was Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar, grandson of Aerys, the true heir to the Iron Throne by every succession law Westeros recognized. His claim outranked hers. His bloodline was more direct. His right to the throne she had spent her entire life believing was her destiny, was stronger. The forbidden relationship was not just forbidden because they were family. It was forbidden because it made everything Daenerys was fighting for suddenly complicated. Think about what Daenerys felt when she heard the truth. She had crossed an ocean. She had lost 2 dragons. She had watched Missandei die. She had given everything she had to a war that wasn't hers to fight, for a world that didn't trust her, beside a man she had fallen in love with. And then that man told her he was not who she thought he was. He was her nephew. He was her rival. He was the one person in the world whose existence threatened everything she believed about herself, not just her claim, but her identity. The story she had told herself about why all of it had happened, why she had suffered, why she had survived, why she had crossed the world. If Jon was the true heir, what was she? A usurper, a woman who had fought her way to the throne of a kingdom she technically had no right to rule, because the rightful ruler was alive and standing in front of her, in love with her, not wanting the throne she had spent her life wanting. That irony is almost unbearable. Jon didn't want it. She did, and the rules said he had it. Here is what the revelation did to each of them. For Jon, it was another unwanted identity, another name he hadn't asked for. He had been Jon Snow, bastard, ranger, Lord Commander. Then he had been the king in the north. Then Aegon Targaryen, secret heir, Rhaegar's son, Lyanna's boy. He didn't want any of it. He wanted to be nobody again. Or failing that, to be just a man who loved Daenerys and fought beside her and let the future take care of itself. For Daenerys, it was the beginning of the end. Not immediately, not all at once, but from the moment she knew the truth, something shifted. The isolation deepened, the grief compounded, the trust she had in the people around her, Sansa, Tyrion, even Jon himself, began to fracture. Because Sansa knew, and Sansa told, and the secret that Jon had promised to keep became the weapon that ended everything. They never recovered, not as a couple, not as allies, not fully even as 2 people who had once looked at each other on a boat in the narrow sea and felt something that seemed, in that moment, like the most right thing either of them had ever done. The love was real. I want to be clear about that. Jon's feelings for Daenerys were genuine. Daenerys' feelings for Jon were genuine. In a different world, a world without prophecy and succession laws and the weight of 300 years of Targaryen history, they might have built something. But they were not in a different world. They were in Westeros, where blood is everything and love is a luxury, and the wrong kind of love can burn a city to the ground. Daenerys burned King's Landing. Jon killed Daenerys. And somewhere in the ruins of that ending, in the ash and the silence after the last dragon's fire went out, the most forbidden relationship in the history of the Seven Kingdoms came to its close. Not with scandal, not with exposure, not with the public horror that Cersei had always feared would come from her own secret, but with a knife between people who loved each other, in a throne room filled with the bones of a dynasty that had always, in the end, destroyed what it most loved. They never knew, when they fell in love on that boat, what they were to each other. By the time they knew, it was already too late. That is the tragedy of Daenerys and Jon Snow. Not the incest, not the politics, not the throne, the timing. They were the right people, in the wrong moment, with the wrong history between them before they even met, and the world was never going to let them forget it.